Hello and welcome to another video from
Absolute Game Off. Nerd!
Right on. All right, we got Mike here from Lunch Money. We are now 6 episodes in to House of the Dragon. We have 2 left. We are here to discuss all that happened this week. So, Mike, start us off high level. How'd you like episode 6?
There was some things I liked about it. It's definitely a slower episode, obviously setting up all the moving pieces. You're, again, 2 episodes now sort of reestablishing where we are in terms of, where the war is at, where the different people are, the struggles they're going through, the power shifts. That was good. It's probably one of the weaker episodes, I think, of the season, or at least exciting. However, my biggest complaint with it, honestly, is a little bit of the directing style. I kind of watched I'm actually noted to my wife, I don't like how they're filming this episode. I thought it was really strange. Lots of slow pans, and it was distracting. Sometimes the camera goes behind 2 people. It was just awkward. And then afterwards, they had an interview with the director, and he's like, "Oh, I want to show all the moving pieces, the slowly." And I was like, "Nah, that didn't work for me. I just didn't like the style, and it was jarring. Like when it takes you out of the story because of a decision they made, directing wise. I don't like.
It's funny you said from behind, because I've heard multiple people be like, I really loved how they filmed the Aemond and Allison scene, when she was like grabbing his face when he was giving her the boot. So kind of funny. It was definitely a slower episode, and like it was a longer episode, and I definitely thought because of the slowness, you felt that length.
Yeah.
And I thought too, at times there were like multiple times where like, oh, this is where they're going to end the episode.
Yes.
And then it kept going.
I'll say the same thing.
And,
my wife dozed off, and that has not happened yet. So
like they could have ended it where Sea Smoke cornered Adam of Hull.
Yeah.
They could have ended it when Larys was on the bed with Aegon. And then it was kind of funny. Then where it did end, I thought it was kind of like, oh, I thought we were going to get that next scene.
Right. You thought to get the payoff of that. No, it was so strange. Yeah. And like I said, my wife has not fallen asleep during one of the episodes. Yeah, but she dozed off in the whole middle there when Allison was talking to her brother, and everything in the middle. I didn't want to wake her up because we had this show. I couldn't stop it. Come on, we have to do this today. But yeah, that's when same thing. I was kind of like, oh, well, it's going to end soon. So, no, it just didn't. It just kept going.
Yeah. And I would say, Mike, I were talking about this before. For those that are watching, we are going to talk more obviously there's spoilers in the sense that like we've watched the episode, we're going to watch what we've seen. But there are some things that we're going to discuss just based on where we're at in the season, what we've seen in regards to where this goes with the books and how it may be different or how we see things tying together. So just throwing that spoiler warning out there for those. If you don't want any of that, by all means, sign off. But I was going to say real quick, because you mentioned your wife fell asleep during the scene between Allison and Gwen. I actually really liked that scene.
That was great.
Yeah, it's like, in a way, Gwen is like saying goodbye again, and it's like in a way it's like the first conversation that they've ever really had. Like it made me really think, like, how weird would that be to be in this situation where you're the 3rd son or wherever, and it's like before you even know who your parents are, you're off to some random castle and being ward till you're a teenager, whatnot. So
no, and I thought it was fantastic, and that's why I described. She's like, "What did I miss?" And I described. I was like, "Actually, it was a really good scene, actually." Yeah. So that's my general feelings. Then we get into the specifics, because a lot happened. Despite saying it was a little bit slower, a lot happened in that episode.
Yeah, and I thought actually this was the episode where Rhaenyra really kind of was center stage for the majority of it, which I thought was really good because she's been fantastic. So I definitely I liked this scene really where she slapped Lord Celtigar. And I just loved her line. She's like, what did she say? It's my fault that you forget how I should be feared or something like that. I was like, oh, that was great. But yeah, I mean, topic a little bit more specifics. Like, what were some thoughts you had?
Well, let's see. If we're going to before specifics.
No, go into specifics.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we get to talk about the scene with Sir Darklyn. Obviously, so they have the suggestion that they need to find people with Targaryen blood. They decide to get a 6th generation removed Targaryen, evidently, and of course he's dutiful. He has vowed as a
not dutiful. I mean, he's excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, he was an honor. It was honor, and it goes very, very wrong. Yeah, and it stinks too because again, my wife doesn't know the story, but I know what happens, right? And I'm like, I think it actually happens different in the book, right? Doesn't he like lose an arm or something like that?
I think so. Yeah, I think he loses an arm or something like
But
that.
yeah, but either way, it's not good. But yeah, I'm wincing. I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, I knew it was gonna be bad. And then you see their reaction, afterwards, and you think it was just a bad idea. And then it sort of bookended with the end of the episode where we see the same dragon actually can get tamed. So I thought that was really cool. And then you start wondering, well, wait a minute, was it because they told Sea Smoke to serve? And he's basically like, all right, sure, I'll take a rider, but not him. And he goes and finds somebody.
Well, I will say too, also in that scene, dude, that where the
tamer,
tamer like slit his own throat. Is like,
Yeah.
oh my god, that's
Yeah. Oh yeah, and he was already kind of burnt, anyways. Like clearly,
he was already fully on fire, but it was like, I can't take. Like that was something.
And he was prepared, like he knew that was a possibility. Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah. What I was gonna say about Darkland that's interesting. It's like, and maybe this is just the mindset when you're in that world and you're in these positions. Like they're like, oh, we need to find a drop of Targaryen blood, but in their mind, they're like, it has to be of noble birth, and so they go 6 generations back to find this drop of blood in the Darkland line. When like the whole idea is like, dude, there are bastards galore in the realm, and I guess because they're not noble, even though like genetically they'd be, the same, it's just not even a consideration. And which is what's going to be interesting, because when you see the preview to next week and you see Rhaenyra kind of like screaming at Adam, like, you've taken it really kind of like punches that whole concept in the face. Like nobility is just a bunch of bullshit you made up.
But what I like about it is that, even when you kind of read the book, the problem is like, there's no obvious, like, oh, we'll just go get like bastard kids who are on Dragonstone, right? The people that are around nearby. But in the show, they're establishing them in different ways. Like you have, again, it's kind of a spoilery, but we've seen a couple of these potential dragon seeds in King's Landing already.
Yeah.
Right. So they're using those people to see the other side, right? They're seeing what's going on in King's Landing, the people starving and things like that. They're not right there on Dragonstone. So I actually kind of like the fact that, like, oh, by doing this with Adam and having him come in, that's them going, aha, they don't need to be noble birth. They can be anybody. That actually makes a lot of sense. That's actually a pretty good workaround, considering they sort of retooled these characters and made them more rich in the show, or gave them more backstory. So I thought that was actually pretty clever.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited. I actually am really looking forward to that scene on the beach next episode to see what happens with that. And then I really liked, again, Alicent in her scenes in the council have been phenomenal. And like the scene this week with I keep saying Aegon, Aemond giving her the boot, I was like, oh man, she is just getting it. And then
she gets cut off at one point. He just talks right over her.
Yeah, I mean, and then at that scene at the end where he's just like, you've served the realm well, and the crown thanks you. I was just like, man, she is just.
Oh, I mean, and it's him being a pragmatist. He's trying to be like, this is the rational, correct decision, whatever. But then when she just looks at him and she holds his face and she's like, where was the line? That was a great line too.
It was like, have the indignities of your childhood not been avenged?
That was it. I was like, oh, that's a tasty line right there.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then you have the other scene where he's talking with Larys Strong.
I liked it a lot when he's like, Larys, like, because he's like, I'm confused, like if Larys was teeing him up, or was he like shocked? He's like, not you, Toad.
Yeah.
Like,
I think he was. I think he wanted to insinuate that he should be Hand, and then he tried covering up for it. Oh, I was insinuating me. And then he comes back around like, oh, I'm honored. And no, shut up. He just, that was him just messing with him, And
but with that in mind, I thought the scene with Larys and Aegon was awesome when he was just
awesome.
Like, when he was like, you're crippled, and that will be, and they'll think less of you, and that will be your advantage.
They'll underestimate you.
Yeah. I was like, ooh, that was good.
It was cool, and that's gonna give Aegon strength, moving forward, absolutely. Because again, that's also you see throughout the episode, Aemon is just, what do you remember? He's leaning into him, hurting him, I mean, and even when he says to the Mace, Grand Maester, he's like, treat him well. It's like even that was ominous, right? So Aegon is.
I mean, even that was like a threat, essentially.
It was a threat, right? Yeah. So Aegon is like terrified of his brother. He knows what his brother did. He remembers, of course, that little conversation with Laris, I think, is hugely important. I think it's absolutely going to be Aegon's going to fight now, and I think that's going to be really important for the later parts of the story. So I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, yeah. So I think some of the stuff we're going to get into now. So we can start first with we have Rhaena in the Vale, and she's walking with Joffrey, and they come across basically charred dragon remains. And then so now she realizes there's a dragon in the Vale. So in the books, Rhaena does not get a dragon, right?
Ever.
And there is not a dragon in the Vale.
No.
Where we have seen this going is that there's a character in the books named Nettles, which I'm sure many people have heard if they look online or anything about this show. That is one of the ones that tames one of tames one of the wild dragons. And when Nettles' story ends, they say she was never to be seen again, but it was like rumored that they found a cave in the Vale and no one ever saw him again, right? So now we're already placing that dragon there. Obviously, in the books, that dragon was Sheep Stealer. In the show, we see a bunch of burned sheep. So we're all going to assume that that is Sheep Stealer that is already in the Vale, and Rhaena is going to take place of Nettles in this story.
Which is fine. It's completely fine. And as we talked about this, you're right. They would only mention 3 dragons on Dragonstone, right? That would down, which we're like, oh, they're cutting out that one. Now we're introduced. So that confirmed they're cutting out that 4th, dragon seed character. But there's a lot more with that character that happens that honestly, it's just they don't have time. As it is, guys, like I feel like they're just Daemon's storyline and Harrenhal. There's parts of that are great, but it's almost like sometimes they don't know what to do with them a little bit.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say
we'll get to that, but he's just like they're kind of like treading water there, and a lot still has to happen. If you look at the timeline of everything that happens, there's just both not enough time and honestly too much time. The way things gonna happen, they just introduced us to the idea of the Triarchy, these pirates that are in the Narrow Sea. That's something that should be happening right about now, but this has to happen first before that, and blah blah blah. My point is, they're consolidating some storylines, and by using Rhaena as Nettles, basically, they're cutting out one whole part of the story, but you're shortening one other one. So we'll still get Sheep Stealer, and we'll have her, which is pretty cool. I think it makes sense, honestly.
Yeah, and the only other thing you're missing is in the books, Daemon ends up having a romantic relationship with Nettles.
Well, no, that's what part I'm saying they're going to cut out.
Oh, yeah. And so we're going to assume he's not.
We're just going to say, right. Spoiler. You said spoiler. Yeah, sorry. They're cutting that part out, obviously, because it's his daughter right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think they're going
to because they don't have enough story to, they can, but like there's a whole thing in the story with that. That's a big part of it. And if you look at the sort of how it's playing out, they're not going to have time. You're not going to do that again with Daemon, just have a whole separate side story. So.
Yeah. And then before we kind of go into what I wanted to get into with the whole dragon stuff, I loved the Harrenhal stuff with Daemon. Now after 4 episodes, it's like, okay, we get it. He's there. It's like, we gotta move him along, get him out of there. Like, I was actually excited when he was like walking out of there. And then Alice is like, no, just wait a little bit. Although it was interesting that when you hear that Grover Tully died, she was there to help with the healing.
Oh, and again, that confirms the people who thought the theories that she wasn't real. She's real.
She's real. And then he's like back. And then obviously if you watch the previews for next week, the Tullys are there. It looks like at least now we're coming to some movement. Yes.
Right. And this is all critical. Again, it took a while for them, I feel like, to get there. But, Daemon does have to get an army for them. It's, as Rhaenyra says, she doesn't have an army at all. Mm-hmm. Like, she just has dragons. So you can see the beginnings of them actually having an army, which means you actually finally have like a real war. So that was cool. It took a while to get there. But, the ghostly stuff going on is kind of neat. You get to learn way more about Daemon and his regrets about his relationship with his brother. It's clever. It's kind of cool, but I just feel like, you only need a couple episodes of that. Now it's like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, especially with the things like that are happening. It's like, we gotta. So in the books, now this is where we're going to get into kind of the real kind of spoilery here. So in the books, you don't get any of that detail of Daemon at Harrenhal. He goes, he claims the castle, and he raises an army, right? Again, the book is just kind of a listing of events. There's no like the show is doing what they can to fill in the gaps. So in the show, or excuse me, in the books, just as Daemon raises that army, the Greens are on their way to Harrenhal. And the whole plot was he distracted them with Harrenhal. So then when they're on the way there, he slips around them. And Daemon uses his contacts in the Gold Cloaks from when he was commander so that him and Rhaenyra can take over King's Landing.
Right.
So my thought now is, since he's still at Harrenhal, they will now use his army and the one that's approaching with Kristen Cole and Gwaine Hightower. That will be one of the battles that happens in the books, because there's a couple battles in the books that are big, but they don't really contain characters that have much significance who we have now been living with in the show. So it's like, why have this big battle when we don't care about anyone here in the show?
Exactly. Yes.
So I think they're going to keep Daemon there for those purposes. Now,
that makes sense.
With Adam taking Sea Smoke and Rhaena taking Sheep Stealer, you've got now these dragons that are now coming to Rhaenyra's cause, right? And you think like, but how is she going to get into King's Landing now without Daemon's contacts in the Gold Cloaks? So my thought is, and I'm curious to see what you think, Alicent is getting just kicked to the curb at every angle she looks, right? Even in that scene when she goes out to talk to Gwaine, you can see like her looking over at Kristen and like hoping like maybe he'll give her something. And it's just, there is no more for her to get anything on the green side. Like, she's like, what did I do? It has come full circle that she has made the wrong choice. And so I'm wondering now if she is the one that assists Rhaenyra getting into King's Landing with all the dragons.
I don't think that will happen. I think you're more likely they wanted to show the unrest in King's Landing through Mysaria's little campaign there. You see the food arrive and it works, right? I think you're more likely to have the city just basically be, because of Aemon screwing up, basically not caring about the small folk. I think you're more likely to see the riots happen and stuff like that, and they can sort of lose a lot of the control over King's Landing that way. I think that's more of a likely play. I don't think you even need the Gold Cloaks. Honestly, they might just cut that whole storyline out entirely. So
you think it's the small folk rioting that gives the window for Rhaenyra to get to King's Landing?
I think it would make sense. I think it makes sense. I mean, and again, you guys are going to see this is a common thread in the story of the small folk rising up at King's Landing. Yeah, it doesn't really matter who's in charge. So I mean, I think they've been planting those seeds quite a bit. So I think that's the easiest one. In fact, that you see it in the actual show, you see Alicent and Helena at the Sept, and they get attacked. So I mean, it's not that far of a stretch to think, oh, and I mean, you see you see one of the Kingsguards get killed.
Yeah, well, I think that was like the fuddy-duddy friend of Aegon too. I think that was one that got killed.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on? Again, this is now. If it hasn't been made, if you haven't figured it out, like, it's obvious that Ulf and Hugh have a big role to play. And that role is going to be dragon riding. So I'm curious, how do you think, because the two dragons that they're going to ride are on Dragonstone. They're in King's Landing. How are they going to make that? Is this how the connection happens? And when the small folk let in Rhaenyra, does she come with those two dragons?
Yes, I don't know. Unless it could be something simple like, have you heard, there's a legitimized bastard of Corlys Velaryon. He's been legitimized and he's riding a dragon. They go, oh, this is our chance, and they go.
Well, that's what I was also wondering, because they have that scene with Ulf in the bar and he's complaining, and Sylvie, the brothel keeper, is there. And she obviously has a connection to Mysaria. So I'm curious, like, does she say like, hey, I found this guy that is claiming he is half Targaryen, like, should we send him to Dragonstone?
And clearly she was saying those stuff out loud on purpose to get people riled up. So the question is, does she already know specifically with him?
Well, I
That's
mean, potentially because he's always spouting that off when he goes to the
right.
bar.
She would know. Right.
So, but then we don't have an answer for Hugh though.
No, that's the one I got. They got. I'm actually worried. Hopefully, that, I'm worried that something bad's gonna happen to his wife and daughter, and he has nothing to lose, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Because
I
there's
mean,
not really any reason for him to leave King's Landing if they're okay, right?
yeah. I think that's a very likely, but how does that still get him to Dragonstone with a dragon or a dragon to him?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it happens after. It could happen later, not this season.
Yeah.
I put it that way. So, yeah. So I don't know. This is where all the pieces are kind of out of place. And again, although this whole thing takes place over a couple of years, really, like they've consolidated so many of the stories. Other things they've done, like there's lots of characters we're not going to see at all. Like a lot of the kids are too young. There's some kids that are so young that they're not going to play a role, and there's other characters that are older, like Adam. He's in the mid-20s, I think, in the show, the actor, but in the book, he's like 14, 13 years old as a kid. So like you're gonna have different characters taking up, like they did Game of Thrones, but you have some characters taking up multiple roles, and I think you're gonna see a lot of that. They're just gonna hurry up some of those timelines. So I don't know. I think they're just gonna move things around so it makes logical sense in the story. And
yeah,
it could just be he never leaves. He goes to Dragonstone. It could just be everything happens there. Who knows?
Actually thinking of what you were saying about the small folk being the one that lets Rhaenyra in, maybe then it's when she gets to King's Landing, maybe that's when she then meets Ulf and Hugh.
That's what I'm saying.
And sends them back to Dragonstone after kind of
correct
to try or something. But yeah, I think it's a good call on Hugh. Something happened to Hugh's wife and daughter that really sets him on a path.
Right. Yeah. But it still is good that we got revisited to both of them on the same episode. We see Adam get a dragon, so that was good. Let's see what else happened. I do want to talk real quickly about that conversation with Alicent and Hugh. And her brother Gwaine, because you find out you talk about the other son.
Yes.
Where was he? That you talk about Daron. Yeah. So he's down and he's been raised by the High Towers pretty much his whole life, and she doesn't know him. And she's asking her brother, "How's he like?" He's like, "Oh, he's a kind of rapscallion. He's good with the ladies, and he's kind." And she's so happy about that. And she says, he says, "This place is Red Keep's a bad place to raise boys." She's like, "Well, maybe it was their mom." But yeah. But no, that's a great conversation between them. And what's good about it is it shows how she knows she's in some way she's failed her boys, but there is hope in Daron. And then you heard in the preview, for those of you that watch preview for the next episode, they mentioned that his dragon has taken flight. He has a dragon as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The dragon's name is Tessarion, and it's like the blue something, right? Don't they call it the blue something?
I don't remember.
I can't remember. Oh, that's what I was actually going to add. So in my theory of, again, this is my pie in the sky theory of Alicent helping Rhaenyra get into King's Landing. Does she? Are you on a call? Yeah, babe. Does she offer, like, for her exchange of help to Rhaenyra? Does she offer, or does she say, like, you have to agree that, because I think she's out now. She's out on both Aegon and Aemon in this kind of scenario. And does she say to Rhaenyra, I will help you in exchange for you being queen now, but you have to agree that Daron is your heir, or something of that, like where he plays into the future, right? Because Gwaine has now sold her on, like, oh, Daron is your saving grace.
Maybe. I think, yeah. See, this is where, again, the timeline of it. We think it's going to be something that happens in the next 2 episodes or in the last episode, maybe. But what do you, like, Aegon's got it, like, Aegon's still there. Like, there's a lot that has to happen. And we haven't seen any of the military stuff. Like you said, we're starting to see River Run, but still haven't seen the Whitebeards from the Starks coming down. We haven't met, and we don't have to, but there's tons of commanders we haven't seen. Although you did get the Lannisters, right? Same actor, by the way, does both Lannister brothers. I thought that was touch. All of these things, so like there's all coming to a head, but we're still missing armies from the Greens. From the Blacks, and we're still missing a few of the Dragons from the Blacks. So there's just a lot that has to happen. Last night was the first time I really questioned the timeline we thought in our heads. We got to Rook's Rest exactly what we thought we would, and now these last 2 episodes have set up so many pieces. I'm like, I don't know if they can do it 2 episodes. Unless they're really going to consolidate some storylines. So I can honestly say I don't really know how this season's going to end.
Yeah, I still am on the boat of, I think it ends with Rhaenyra taking King's Landing. I don't think we'll see Daron in the next episode, because you have that scene where they're like, and Daron is taking flight. Right. If anything, I think you will see him in episode 8.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing I think that I'm assuming is going to happen next season is they did introduce, or they did mention, making cause with the triarchy.
Yes.
So we don't need to go into spoiling what happens with the triarchy,
Right.
but I'm going to guess that as well is going to be next season.
I think so too. And again, I think your reasoning, the reason we've talked about this kind of off camera, we talked about last season ended with a big green win and like the Blacks in a bad place. And then we thought, okay, something good. He's going to flip a little bit, right? You're going to see Rhaenyra kind of get a win here. But again, every single victory in this story is a Pyrrhic one, right?
Yeah.
And so they always have goods and bads. And I worry that if you always end on just a horrible, melancholy note, it just doesn't feel good as a viewer. And that's why I think a lot of things are moving to the next season. Because again, there's a lot of bad things happen to people in this story, but you can't have all those things happen at the same time, or you don't really have a show. So that's why I think they're going to move things around strategically with certain actors, especially to keep them in the show longer. And I think that's exactly I'm not going to get into spoilers, but to what you're talking about, I think they're going to keep a few characters around a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else we missed, or is that
did so much happened in this episode. Yeah. We talked about Alice Rivers. She is real, so people can be arrested. I think they are going to drop this future storyline with her. Well, maybe they won't. In another character, there is another person that she hangs out with quite a bit in the story. They might just cut that entirely. Maybe not. I do wonder about little things like the Lannister host doesn't want to move until they have a dragon. Until they ask for Aemon in the beginning of the episode with Vhagar, and he's like, "How dare they beckon me to call?" Yeah. But do they get his little brother's dragon? There's a dragon. Maybe that dragon goes. But if that's the case, then that screws up what happens in the next big battle, because there is no dragons at those battles. So this is why I like your idea of Daemon going one way, the rope-a-dope, but you can't have a dragon there.
Yeah.
That stuff to play out the way it's supposed to. So, right, maybe they just delay for a while. So, I don't know. Have they cast Darren?
I actually was going to Google if they have, but I didn't get a chance to, so I have no idea, and I've not seen it at all.
Yeah, that would help answer that question there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say to kind of close up. So this was an 8-episode season. However, the episodes have been fairly, like, I think only one was in like that low 50-minute range.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even though we got 8 episodes, like, I feel like we've got 9.5 worth of like actual screen content.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the next 2 episodes are all going to be around like the 70-minute mark as well. So,
I did one more question for you too. So you see Alan of Hull shaving his
the silver hair.
Does Adam dye his hair?
Not Targaryen hair, Valerian hair.
Right, Valerian hair. Yes. Does he dye his hair? The other brother?
I don't know. I was wondering how they would kind of go about that as well. I wasn't
right.
I wasn't too sure on that.
I do say, this episode also confirmed that they are the bastard children of Corlys. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
In the book, their parentage is not clear. It's rumored that they're the children either of Corlys or Laenor Velaryon. So, but a lot of people, for the same reason that the other boys aren't believed to be his.
But I also, in the book, don't they clarify that their mom is a dragon seed? So there is.
She also is distantly. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And she won't say who the father is. She never admits it. So
there is definite Valyrian blood in them.
Right. So, but what I don't like about it is, again, it's heavily implied they're actually Corlys's kids. But I like the idea that if Sea Smoke was, Laenor's dragon, it's kind of cool to be like, this guy is actually his son. It makes sense, right?
Takes his place.
He takes his father's dragon. And now it's kind of weird because he's taking his would be his half brother. He's taking his half brother's dragon, which I guess still works, right? It's still pretty cool.
Yeah, and I guess that is something we can talk about real quick, is that is a bit canon shattering in the sense that we've mentioned before. As long as the writer is alive, dragons are not thought to take a new writer.
Yeah.
Laenor is obviously not there. I mean, theoretically, he could be dead. We don't know, but I think that'd be kind of dumb if they were to come out like, well, actually, Laenor has been killed and blah blah blah.
They might.
But so if not, right, as we know, he's alive, like in Essos somewhere, and so they have done a little canon shattering there with now Adam on Sea Smoke.
Right.
And for those that know, in the books, Laenor is dead.
Right.
So
I do think it was an interesting how they've done it, that Alan is the one that's gotten way more screen time and way more pathos, more, I feel like he does not want, for whatever reason. I mean, I think he hates, even though he saved his life, I think he hates the sea snake because he's been abandoned, never legitimized, whatever the reasons is. But clearly he doesn't like, is this a command or are you just asking me to be your first mate? But Adam barely talks. Like, we had that one scene when you introduce him, he's always just hanging out, like making a net or something. So I think it's interesting that he's just thrust into this and we don't have much going on. And also in the story, and I don't think this is a spoiler, or is it? Nah, I don't care. Spoiler alert. In the book, his brother, once they say, oh, you can ride a dragon, get your brother over here and have him try. And it doesn't go as well. So I'm wondering if they do that. That'd be kind of neat, actually. The way they painted Alan, he's far more pragmatic, I feel like, and dour, and I don't think he would even care to.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I'm really excited to see how the next episode opens up. And then, like, how does she get him down on the ground? She's like, get down. Like, what are they going to do? They're not going to fight? Land your dragon. Like, what are they going to do?
I'm assuming like
a cop.
I'm assuming maybe he's already on the ground and he's trying to she sees him and so then goes down with to meet him.
Yeah. I like the fact that she's so stir crazy. She just gets, I got to get out of here. And her son is yelling, don't leave. What are you doing? She doesn't care. She wants to know what's going on. Oh, we forgot one of the biggest scenes. The scene with her and Mysaria. She says, we don't need to talk about that, but clearly from an emotional standpoint, she lost Rhaenys, right? Her right-hand woman there. I think she misses that female perspective, being surrounded by all these men. They obviously, and then the fact that Mysaria says, basically, you kind of saved my life, so I'm indebted to you, and that just hits her just right, And it's cool to see her with Daemon gone. She has nobody really.
Well, not that, and Jace is now starting to like question her, right? It's like all she needed was someone to vouch, like, no, you are the queen that we want. And I think it just the emotion,
and even like a little line where she's like, she has the sword, and Mysaria is like, it suits you, and that just you can see for Rhaenyra, she's like, damn it, this is my war, she wants to fight for it, and she says it out loud. She's just tired of just being there all the time. She wants to fight. She is a dragon rider, and they won't let her leave on her dragon. Cyrax is a big dragon too, so all of that stuff was good. All just tasty stuff, Again, I just didn't like the way it was filmed. That was my only nitpick about it. Lots of weird movement that didn't need to be there. It's distracting. That's all.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, we can call it there.
No, all set.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Let us know what you thought about episode 6, and we will see you next week with the penultimate episode, which is sad that we're already that far along, but it's been a good ride so far. But otherwise, again, let us know what you thought of the episode. We'll see you next week. Peace out.